Hello, good evening, everybody. Welcome. We are live. I'm just going to give a few moments for everyone to get comfortable and open this up. Welcome. All right, I'm just going to jump into it now. Let's get started. So hello, everyone. My name is Savannah, and I am the Book Week Coordinator with SaskBooks, the Creative Industry Association for Book Publishing in Saskatchewan. And tonight we are so excited to have Robin and Arlene Karpan here with us, reading and featuring their book, The Great Saskatchewan Bucket List, revised and updated edition. This book not only shows you 50 natural wonders, but also helps you to get there. The new edition includes updated information and new natural wonders. And the Great Saskatchewan Bucket List was named the #1 best-selling Saskatchewan book for 7 consecutive years, from 2012 to 2018, by SaskBooks, which is pretty incredible when you think about it. So we're really excited to have the Karpans here with us tonight. Before we get started, I just wanted to take a few moments to make a few comments. First, SaskBooks is located on Treaty 4 territory. Our head office is located there. But as the Provincial Industry Association for Book Publishing, our work spans lands covered by Treaties 2, 4, 5, 6, 8, and 10, the traditional lands of the Nahiwak, Anishinaabe, Dakota, Lakota, Nakota, and Dene people, as well as the homeland of the Métis. I'd like to invite everyone to put in the comments where you're joining from. If you don't know whose land you're on, there's a really helpful link that I'm putting in the chat that you can find out. Especially as we're discussing places and lands in Saskatchewan, we do need to acknowledge the presence of Indigenous folks here from time immemorial, the forced removal of many Indigenous folks from their territories, and the ongoing colonial occupation of these lands. And of course, acknowledgement is just one part of a larger commitment, and we would like to encourage you all to read the TRC's calls to action if you haven't already. So I have another little helpful link in there for you to take a look at as well. I'd also like to thank our funders, the Department of Canadian Heritage, the Canada Book Fund, and Creative Saskatchewan. Without their support, Book Week would not be possible. We would not be able to have this lovely reading with you all tonight. So I am very excited to introduce Robin and Arlene Karpan for you. Robin and Arlene Karpan are travel writers, photographers, and book publishers based in Saskatoon, Saskatchewan. They got hooked on travel back in their student days and never stopped wandering around the globe, eventually turning their interest into a full-time business. For many years, they have worked as freelance travel writers and photographers, contributing to well over 100 publications around the world, working on contract projects for business and government in the travel and tourism field and selling stock photography. So I am so excited to welcome Robin and Arlene here today. Please, everyone, welcome them to this wonderful event. Thank you so much. Hello, everyone. Hello, you guys. How are you doing?
Just a minute. Yeah. Hi, Savannah.
Thank you for being here tonight.
Well, thanks for asking us.
Thanks for the invitation, for sure.
So I'm going to let you take it away.
Okay, what we're going to start with is we've got about a video of just over a minute to kind of set the scene, and then we'll get into the main part of the presentation. So here we go. Okay, bucket list. Everybody's got a bucket list. And we decided that a few years ago that it was time to do one for Saskatchewan. And what we did was specifically look at natural wonders. There are quite a few throughout the province. The major task, though, was to trying to get it a reasonable size. So we picked 50. And the reason we picked 50 was that it would be something people could sink their teeth into. They're places from throughout the province. So part of what we tried to do is get something from north, south, east, west, different ecoregions, different parts of the province. And as was mentioned, this year we did a revised edition. We completely sold out last Christmas. So this year we released a new edition and updated a few things. There were a few things that were getting out of date, and then a lot of the places, there's things that change. New roads come on stream, other ones deteriorate, as often happens, and just trying to bring things up to date of what you can see. So what we've done in the book is also rate things as to how easy or difficult they are to visit, and on a 1 to 5, 1 being easy, 5 being difficult. Now, the vast majority of places are easy, but there's a few that it's going to take a little more effort. So we thought that any quest worth its salt needs a few challenges. So let's get started.
We're going to start our trip in the Cypress Hills in the southwest corner of the province. And this is the west block of the park and a view of Adams Lake from the conglomerate cliffs. This is our go-to place that we really enjoy coming to in the west block. Again, very easy to visit. You just drive right up to the edge of the cliff. And the other thing that's really enjoyable about this spot is that it's a great place to come for sunrise. Now you're going to have to get up very, very early to be here to catch the sunrise, about 5 o'clock in the morning and on a summer's day. But it's worth the effort, believe me. So that's when the sun comes up. It just clears the horizon over the surrounding hills there, and it shines up on the conglomerate cliffs and just turns them this crimson red glow. There is another set of conglomerate cliffs as well, also in the west block, and they're called the hidden ones. And that's because you can't see them from the road. You can access them from the Trans-Canada Trail or the Great Trail, and there's another way that you can get to them as well. And we explain all this in the book along with GPS coordinates and roads to take. Now in the center block, one of the best spots to come for sunset is Bald Butte and the Lookout Point, which are very close together, and you just, again, drive right up to them, and you might have a little hike to the top of Bald Butte. But again, it's a beautiful site for sunset, easy to get to, and you can see for miles. In fact, you can see Maple Creek in the distance on a clear day. And you can see how far up the Cypress Hills are, over 600 meters above the surrounding plains. And there are many places in Saskatchewan to go and see wildflowers. There's dazzling displays in lots of places. But we think that the Cypress Hills tops the charts when it comes to wildflowers, both for the intensity of the growth and also for the variety in the colors around the end of July, first couple weeks in August. And don't be surprised if you find some mountain varieties in the park, such as these silvery lupins. And that's because the park is so high in altitude that some of the alpine species really like this kind of environment. You'll see lots of really interesting flowers. For example, the mountain shooting star is fairly easy to see. Also, the Cypress Hills has a huge variety of something like 18 different orchids, more than any other province in Western Canada. And many of them are found easily in the Cypress Hills if you go looking for them around June or so. This is the Calypso orchid, also called the Venus slipper.
Not all of the great scenery is only in the park. Another great area is near the town of East End. And one of our favorite roads anywhere in the province is a road that goes between East End and Ravenscrag. And it follows the Frenchman River and the Frenchman River Valley. And we have these neat formations along the way. And the highest point of land along here is called Jones Peak. And you can see the communications tower on top. And because there's a communications tower, it's also easy to get to. There's another road you can take higher up into the hills where you can get right into there and overlook these sandstone formations overlooking the valley. And again, here, sunset is usually our go-to or time to go that we prefer. Now we're getting into Grasslands National Park, and Grasslands National Park has so much that you could probably get 50 places just there. So what we did was kind of look at what we thought are some of the highlights. And this is 70 Mile Butte. This is just south of the town of Val-Marie. And if you come here at sunset and get back from the Butte a ways, and we suggest some roads you can take and lookout points. And on a clear day, when the sun goes down, it shines on the Butte because it faces west, and it'll often turn this crimson red color. Now, these are black-tailed prairie dogs. One of the issues with wildlife viewing is that the critters aren't always where we think they should be. Often it's a matter of hit and miss whether you're going to see wildlife. But seeing these guys is as close as we can get to a sure thing. You come here in the summer to the west block of the park, and they're there. They're right along the road. And black-tailed prairie dogs, they're about, almost twice the size of gophers or Richardson ground squirrels that we have in other areas. And they live in huge colonies. And this is the only place in Canada where you can see them in their natural habitat. They're right at the northern end of their range here. They're very communal. They're the family groups. They're always nuzzling each other and very close. And we understand they're tasty as well. At least it was according to this coyote that caught one for lunch. Now, all kinds of other critters here as well. You'll probably see bison that wander throughout the west block. Deer, especially mule deer, very common. Moose. We often don't think of the south as being moose country, but they're certainly here. And pronghorn. Pronghorn are very common throughout the southern part of the province, and especially in Grasslands Park. The other must-see place in Grasslands is the Badlands Overlook. And this is in the east block of the park, south of the community of Wood Mountain. And there's a road. In fact, the park just over the last year or two put in a new road with lookout points over the Badlands. And it's a spectacular sight. Great place to go hiking. This was on a foggy morning, but it was just great hiking anywhere here. And at the end of the road, there's some of Parks Canada's iconic red chairs overlooking the Badlands. Another set of Badlands that we feature is the Big Muddy Badlands. And this is Castle Butte. This is the easiest place that you can go in the Big Muddy Badlands. And the Big Muddy, if you're not sure where it is, south of Bengoff, north of Big Beaver, kind of almost due south of Regina. And you come here in the daytime, and it looks like mud, almost has the color of mud as well. But if you hang around till sunset, the low sun will hit this butte and turn it this nice crimson red. As nice as sunset is, sunrise is even better. In fact, it's a variation of this photo that we used on the cover for the bucket list book. And what happens especially in midsummer, is that the sun clears the horizon on the lowest part of the valley. And because the butte is on a bit of a rise, all of a sudden the sun shines up at this monolith and just suddenly turns it this bright crimson color. And that's Castle Butte as well, just getting a little farther away as you drive one of the roads getting into the hills and looking back towards the butte. Another badland area that probably is the least known in Saskatchewan is the Avonlea Badlands. Very close to the town of Avonlea. It's a small area. What happens is you walk across a pasture, and then all of a sudden you look down into this area of incredible buttes, hoodoos, and all sorts of weird formations. But unlike other badlands, which are in parks or in other public areas, this one is on somebody's pasture, so you can't just wander on your own. But what's happened is that the museum in Avonlea runs guided tours. So they'll run tours here in the daytime, sometimes in the evening to get evening light and so on. So this is something else that's very much well worth doing. Now this is Roche Percé, and this is one place we added in this edition of the book. Roche Percé is it's very close to Estevan, almost at the U.S. border in southeast Saskatchewan. And there's a series of sandstone formations. This is the main one that's right beside the road, and it's been a lookout point for years. When the Northwest Mounted Police did their march west, they camped here. The Boundary Commission mentioned it, and it dates back farther than that as well. But it's not only this particular formation. There's a little park area, and if you walk back into the trees, there's all sorts of other weird formations. And because it's sandstone, they're easily eroded, and it just some incredible shapes. And there's even some areas where there's bridges and holes in the rock.
Now, Saskatchewan is the sand dune capital of Canada. There is no other place in this country that has as many sand dunes covering such a large area as Saskatchewan. Here we're looking at the Great Sandhills, which is the second largest set of dunes in the province, covering over 1,900 square kilometers. Now, not all of them are sand dunes that are active, like this one in the photo. A lot of them are stabilized dunes, but because there is this large area of active sand, it's very, very easy to visit. This is a number one on our ease of difficulty. You just drive south of Sceptre in the southwest. We give you directions. You drive right up to them, and you can go exploring throughout this huge area. It's quite well known. There's a lot of footprints and everything in the beginning at the parking lot area. But once you get farther afield, you can be alone and making your own tracks over some of these spectacular sand dunes. The best time to come is either early morning or in the late evening when the sun shines on the dunes and accentuates all of the ripples and the shadows. There's another set of sand dunes, and this is a new new addition to the revised edition that we put in for this printing. These are in Douglas Provincial Park on the east side of Douglas Park. You access them very simply through a walking trail. And if you come here again in the evening, because the dunes primarily face west, it's a magical time of day, and you can be alone, walk farther and farther than the main area where people walk. You'll be all alone, and you can see features like these sand circles. And what's happened here is that the wind has blown just a single blade or 2 or 3 blades of grass and whipped them around, and that has formed circles in the sand. So see how many features you can find that are unique to the sand dunes. All right, now who doesn't like snakes? Saskatchewan is home to a huge hibernaculum of red-sided garter snakes on the east side of the province, just north of the town of Pelly, near Fort Livingston, where there's a memorial cairn commemorating a fort that was once built here in 1874. Now, the fort is long gone, but the snakes are still here. And the snakes come out every year along the riverbank. They have this hibernaculum, which is just a bunch of holes in the riverbank above the Swan River. And every year around Mother's Day, they come out in force when the weather turns warm. And the first thing that's on their mind is mating. And they form these huge mating balls. They try to find a female and basically kind of assault her. But in the interim, what's happening is these mating balls, and the snakes are just sort of writhing and moving and falling down the sides of the riverbank as they go about their duties, driven by Mother Nature. Now, this is a great place to come around Mother's Day. So I bet you your mother would really enjoy a trip like this for a Mother's Day present. It would certainly be something that she would never, ever forget. Now, a little bit different subject matter. We turn to birds now and have a look at some of the bird phenomena that we have in Saskatchewan. This is another rite of spring, which is the sharp-tailed grouse. And as soon as the snow is off the ground, or maybe even earlier, they launch into their spring rituals. The sharp-tailed grouse is the provincial bird emblem of Saskatchewan. And here we see some males that are dancing on a lek, or a mating ground. And what they do is their tails come up and that purple patch comes off, inflated, and they dance around trying to impress the females. Now, a lot of us are familiar with fall migration. It's happening right now. It's underway as we speak. And Saskatchewan is one of the best places in Canada to see the fall migration. We are on the North American Central Flyway, and we're on kind of a pathway, an informal pathway between the birds' nesting grounds way up north and where they spend the winter. So here we're at Luck Lake Heritage Marsh, and we're just seeing tens of thousands of birds come in and land. And there's other great places too, such as at Quill Lakes, and the Blast Mountain Natural Wildlife Area. And we enumerate these places in the book and tell you how to get there. And here's some tundra swans at Luck Lake, just sort of relaxing and feeding and preening and getting ready for the next leg of their journey. We're also home to some of the whooping cranes that are coming by. And this is a phenomenon that happens around this time of year. They do come to Saskatchewan from their nesting grounds in Wood Buffalo National Park on their way down to Texas, where they spend the winter. And while they're in Saskatchewan, they come and feed in some of the cropland, and it's a great time to see them if you're able to join a tour, or if you know where they might be. And could be a different place every year. But it is something definitely that is very special about Saskatchewan. There's only about 500 or so whooping cranes left in the world.
This is the Coupelle Valley. And here, rather than pick out a specific point, in the book, we talk about driving the length of the Coupelle Valley. You can drive almost a third of the way across Saskatchewan while staying entirely in this scenic valley. And it's a great trip. The roads are a mixed bag from paved to gravel to a few dirt roads. There's the hills on both sides, the meandering Copel River always in the middle, and it's a wonderful time in the summer and also in the fall. Some of the highlights, a tiny community of Ellisboro. There's 2 churches here, and I think 2 or 3 houses. But it's probably one of the most picturesque towns anywhere in Saskatchewan. And fall, this time of year, is great. And some of the highlights, here's the Kennel Church, which is near Craven, and especially nice in the fall. Now, heading into the Aspen Parklands, this is the mysterious crooked bush. And it's a strange group of aspen trees that every branch, every twig, every trunk is twisted and contorted. And what's bizarre is that the bushes right next to it are perfectly normal. So what happened here? There's a lot of speculation over the years. Someone suggested they buried a lawyer here at one time, so I don't know about that. But the story that has been around for quite a while is many years ago, there's a local fellow who swears he saw a UFO land here. Flying saucer landed, the passengers got out, they all had a pee on the ground, got back in, flew off. Trees were never the same after that. Now, this area used to be also quite famous for its home brew. Maybe that's just a coincidence. Now, scientists have more mundane explanations about genetic mutations and such things, but you have to ask what caused the mutation in the first place. And we think it was probably spaceman Pete. Now, heading a little farther north, this is the Nipikimu Sand Pillars and Cliffs. This is southeast of L'Orange, along the narrow Nipikimu River. And in a few places, in a short distance, there's several of these brilliant white cliffs. And you can get to them fairly easily. They're just off the road. There's a parking area, and then there's a walking trail of maybe 15, 20 minutes, and you look at them over the narrow river. Now, who has been on the road to love? Now, before you get too excited about finding romance here, keep in mind that this refers to the town of Love, which is south of Narrow Hills Provincial Park. And in the early years, before the modern roads were in place, they used to come, the settlers from the Love area, which was kind of the northern part of the grain belt, to get to the lakes, they travel over these narrow hills and to get there. And now there's a scenic drive in the park called the Narrow Hills Scenic Drive. And it follows a push moraine, which was formed by the glaciers. And when you look at it like this, you can see why it's called the Narrow Hills, because there's a lot of features here that are that show how the glaciers formed the land. Lots of neat little wetlands in the forest. The best time to come is right now, this time of year. This is great anytime. Summer is wonderful, but fall color is just spectacular. In fact, we did an article a little while ago on what were the best driving routes for fall colors in Saskatchewan, and I think we would pick this one as the top one. Along the way, there's a few viewpoints overlooking the seemingly endless forest dotted with lakes. And then it ends at the Gem Lakes, where there's this lookover. This is the Grace Lakes. And there's a lookout point where you can see this wonderful set of lakes. They call it the Grace Lake or the Grace Lakes. It's actually 2 bodies of water joined by this narrow passageway.
Now, continuing farther north, Saskatchewan is a land of many, many waterfalls. This one is one that is fairly easy to visit, especially if you have a canoe, or you can take a boat from the town of Stanley Mission and arrange for a tour. This is Nastoyak Falls, and it's located on this very, very short, rapid river, it's called. It's only about 1 kilometer long, and it drains a massive Lac La Ronge into the Churchill River. So depending on water levels, you could find the Nastoyak Falls either boiling, or it might be a little bit less turbulent, depending on how things are coming out of Lac La Ronge. Now on to number 5. We've rated this one as a number 5 because it's very difficult to visit, and it's quite a dangerous approach to this waterfalls. This is the Wapaman Gorge, and it is on the eastern Churchill River. And the reason we rated it as a 5 is because it's the approach to it is you've got to be bang on, or else your canoe is going to go over here. And all of the water from the entire Churchill River comes funneling in here. So it's a lot of water, and it's a long, turbulent set of rapids, but definitely worth seeing if you are able to take a canoe trip there. Another popular area for canoe trips is the Clearwater River, and this is Smooth Rock Falls. It's so big that you can't even see it all at once. It makes a big C turn here and continues on its way. And one of the neatest spots is an overflow channel, where some of the water, if it's a high water year, it comes over and makes these little wispy waterfalls on the side channel of the river. Skull Canyon is another highlight. And here we see the entrance where the water comes tumbling out of Skull Canyon. And here's the skull, which you can see quite easily on this foggy morning when the sunlight comes up and it backlit the eyes of the skull. And a different type of terrain again is on the Fond du Lac River, where we're here at Manitou Falls, which is the main feature of the Fond du Lac River. But the surrounding terrain and everything that it goes through, or most of the area it goes through, is along sandstone formation. So that's another easily eroded and constantly changing set of falls and different types of cliffs that we have in the province.
Now, this is the Porcupine River. The Porcupine starts around the Northwest Territories border, flows south to the Fond du Lac, and it's just filled with waterfalls and all sorts of spectacular features. But this spot, the Eye Cave, is in a class by itself. It's an area where there's these huge cliffs, and in one place there's this fissure opening in the cliff, and there's actually a cave, and you can we got 2 canoes in there at the same time, and then when you're inside, you look up, and there's this hole in the top. It's like it's a gigantic eye looking down at you. And the other thing is you look up and you wonder what's holding that rock. Now, if you're interested in spectacular landscapes, larger than life, the north shore of Lake Athabasca is the place to go. This is Beaver Lodge Mountain. It's the highest point of land on the north shore. And there's actually a local Dene legend here that there was a giant beaver that once lived here. And the body of water right in front is Lodge Bay. And at the other end of Lodge Bay, there's this strange pinnacle rock. And what happened was that eons ago, probably centuries ago, this cliff face collapsed, but it left this one chimney rock standing overlooking the bay. And you can get up here. It takes a bit of scrambling over these lichen-covered rocks, but the view is just outstanding. And probably the most colorful spot on the north shore is Reed Bay. The cliffs rise straight out of the deep water here, And it's so colorful because of the different seams in the rocks and then also the lichen that covers it. And this faces west. So if you can time it to be here at around sunset, it just takes on an additional glow. And the other issue here is you can only see it from the water, so you have to hope for calm conditions. Now, we looked at a few other waterfalls, but now it's time to really get serious about waterfalls. This is Hunt Falls, the biggest waterfall in Saskatchewan. This one drop is 15 meters, but in a 3-kilometer section here, the river drops something like 35 meters. So there's just one feature after another. And it's not only the falls itself, but this whole area is just drop dead gorgeous. It's just a spectacular area. And interestingly enough, even though it's very remote, it's about 40 kilometers northwest of Stony Rapids in that area. But it's not that difficult to visit because float planes can land in the lake just above the falls and taxi into a little cove, protected cove, and then it's a short walk to the brink of the falls and looking over it as well. So it's just an incredible place. This is on the other side of the falls. To get to here, you have to have a boat or canoe. We had a canoe here, so we were able to get around to the other side and then kind of bushwhack through the bush to get this view as well.
Now, the south shore of Lake Athabasca is entirely a different story. Here we find the Athabasca sand dunes, which is the largest set of sand dunes in Canada and the most northerly set of dunes in the world, major dunes in the world. There are about 40 of these long, narrow sand dunes called the Giant Dunes, and they're west of the William River. And they can be 30 meters high and over a kilometer long. Now, this photo might appear to be familiar to you. Canada Post used this on one of their stamps, which is actually still available from Canada Post. The highlight here is coming here in the evening, which is about 10:30 when sunset happens this far north. And one side of the dune is in golden glow and the other side is in deep shadow. It's just an absolutely spectacular area. Now we're on the south shore of Lake Athabasca, looking across to the other side into what seems like oblivion and a big, big sea. And we like this area that's called the Exhumed Forest. Now what happened here years and years ago is that the moving sand buried a forest and it killed all the trees. It just dried them out. And then as the sand kept moving with the prevailing winds, these trees were exhumed or brought back to the surface again. And this is what we're left with, is kind of a wonderland where you could see these straight sentinels here sort of guarding the south shore of the lake. And we definitely include seeing the William River from the air as one of the highlights and one of the 50 things that you should do, or that we enjoyed doing anyway, that was on our bucket list. The William River, we've canoed up it several times and down it once or twice, but there is nothing that compares to seeing the river from the air. You can see how the river divides two major dune fields, and it's just filled with sand and sandbars. This is what we were facing when we were trying to canoe upriver here to about 18 kilometers or so. The dark spaces, the dark pieces, are the deeper channels. And you could see what a mess it was trying to find our way in the deeper channels because the water just basically ran out and we'd have to get out and walk to the next deepest water. Everything that you see that is white here, bright white, is above water. Everything else is below water. So the contours and the and the shapes and the structures of the sand dunes are breathtaking. We looked for some kind of a metaphor to describe this, and we came up with butterscotch pudding marbled with whipped cream. And again, the bright white parts are above water, everything else is below. And if you looked at this in isolation, would you even think that this is actually a riverbed? It looks like more like some kind of surreal painting or something very, very bizarre.
Okay, now we're going to end with the easiest thing of all that's on your bucket list, and that's the Saskatchewan Sky. We're called the land of living skies for good reason. When it comes to sunrises and sunsets, we have the best ones on the planet, without a doubt. There's just some incredible colors that we get here. But it's not only sunrises and sunsets. There's these rare, calm days where you've got clouds, fluffy clouds reflecting in the lake here. There's rainbows that you can almost feel like you can reach out and touch them. Northern lights, great place to see northern lights, especially in the fall and early winter. And the night sky, because we don't have a lot of light pollution. You get out into the rural areas, the north, you can always see the stars in the night sky. And of course, there's some spectacular summer storms that we get. So there's just a brief summary. We only had time to show you a few of the things that are in the bucket list book. If you're interested in it or any of our other titles, take a look at our website, parklandpublishing.com. You can get the book at bookstores. You can get it directly from us, or SaskBooks has them as well, so you can order from them. And if you're interested in seeing more of our travels, also check out our blogs, photojourneys.ca. So with that, we'll end it, and back to you. See if there's any questions or comments that people have.
Hello. Thank you so much for that wonderful presentation and for sharing so much information and wonderful photographs. That was really lovely. Thank you. Everyone who's tuning in right now, if you want to send some questions in the comments from whatever platform you're listening on, that would be wonderful. If you want to post it in the, if you comment it, then I can bring it up to Robin and Arlene. In the meantime, while y'all are thinking of some questions that you're itching to have answered, I have a question for you two. What was it like to revisit the book and revise it? How was that process for you after so many years?
Well, for one thing, we ran out of copies, so we had to print another copy, print some more anyway. So, and this happened right after Christmas last year. So, in anticipation of that, we thought it was time to not only what we had been doing with other printings. It's gone through several printings, and we would do minor updates. But we thought it was time to go through the book and give it a complete going over. There were a couple of things that had changed that were fairly major. If people remember an earlier edition of the book, we had a place called the Sand Castles on Lake Diefenbaker, which were accessible then, but are no longer accessible to the public now. So that had to be changed. There were a couple other places where roads were an issue, so we had to take those out, put in a couple of new ones that we mentioned in the presentation, and then almost everywhere there's always changes taking place. There's new roads, for example, the new road that Grasslands Park has to the Badlands, things like that, and just to make sure that it's up to date as possible.
Very cool. Thank you. Another question I have is sort of in two parts. First, how has traveling the province changed since you first started adventuring across Saskatchewan? So you've both been doing this for a very long time. So I'm wondering about how that's changed for you over the years. And then like part two of that question is, how has it changed during the pandemic? How has your work as travel writers and photographers changed through this pandemic? So just kind of like big picture over the many years you've been doing your work, but then also like recently how that's been impacted.
Well, we've enjoyed traveling throughout the province for many, many years, as you have alluded to, and we still continue to do so. We have found that a lot of changes, yes, have taken place, some for the better. We and Robin talked about a couple of those, for example, in Grasslands National Park, and how the facilities have changed. For example, there's more campsites available. There's more hiking trails. I would say throughout the province, there's more opportunities for people to get out into nature and enjoy some of the backcountry on trails. And a prime example of that would be the Boreal Trail in Meadow Lake Provincial Park, for example. So that is, I think, something that's been very, very positive. And in terms of the pandemic has not, I don't want to say forced us, but encouraged us to stay closer to home. So we've explored even more of Saskatchewan and gone back to a lot of our favorite places to take new photos. We haven't been terribly affected by the pandemic because we've been able to take photos and walk trails and canoe some rivers and lakes. And most of our work is outdoors, so we've been fortunate in that way.
Well, that's wonderful. I'm glad that you've still been able to do the exciting things that you've been working on. That's wonderful. Um, another question I had was, so like when I introduced your book, I mentioned that it is one of the best-selling titles of SaskBooks from 2012 to 2018, I think, for a very long time. Why do you think it is that this book has resonated so deeply with folks for such a long time? Like, there's been such sustained interest in this book, and I'm curious, why do you think that is? Other than the fact that it's a wonderful book, but if you want to speak to that at all.
I think people are fascinated with the idea of bucket lists. It's and we've written about a lot of these similar places and some of the same ones in, for example, we've got a book on scenic driving routes, another one on photography, another one on canoeing, and so on. But what we tried to do with the bucket list was to kind of cut to the chase and say, okay, if you're in Saskatchewan or you're coming to visit Saskatchewan, what would be the 50 places that you should consider doing? So it's trying to zero in on what we think is the best of the best. And the idea of the book is not that you should only go to those particular places. So, for example, we talked about the conglomerate cliffs in the west block of Cypress Hills. We consider that as the highlight, but while you're there, there's a gazillion other things that you should do as well. And the same in other places, in Grasslands, in a lot of the other parks as well. And the other thing that's happened more recently was the pandemic, which actually was positive for books like this, because people are first of all traveling closer to home. And the other thing is that our places are about natural areas, so outdoors. So when we get into things like social distancing and so on, you can, if you're worried about that, you can still go to a lot of these places and not have to worry about being in crowded buildings and that sort of thing. So that's been I wouldn't say a positive overall, but for this book, it's been a factor as well.
And I think just to add to that is that we hoped that people would use our book as sort of a springboard to come up with their own bucket list. These are our 50 natural wonders that we've really enjoyed seeing. And I'm sure that everyone out there has come up with other places and found hidden gems and places that they love too. So it's all about just visiting Saskatchewan and making the most of what we have here and discovering new places.
I'm muted. Everyone, I'm going to send a question to all of you who are listening. Tell us, what are the top places to visit on your bucket lists? And we also have a question in the comments from Bill Caphan. Have you tried gravel biking? Many trails are now accessible by mountain bike.
We haven't personally, but I mean, that's certainly a thing that a lot of people do. And there's getting to be a lot more biking trails as well. I know originally in a lot of the parks, some trails will be designated for hiking, but there's now a lot of them that are for both hiking and biking, which is great for people like Bill who like to do that sort of thing.
Thank you for that. You also have another question here too, from Daniel Parr. Any exciting new books in the works?
Not now, not yet. We'll keep you posted if there are.
Yeah, you'll be among the first to know.
Awesome. And I also have a question for you. So you've been to so many places. Can you tell me like one or two? I mean, it's hard to choose. You've picked from like the top of the top, as you've said. Can you name just a couple places that you just keep coming back to and that are just like keep drawing you back in?
Well, we'll give a couple of examples. The top one, and it's not necessarily easy to get back to, and that's the Athabasca Sandy. In fact, it's quite difficult to get to. But it's like nowhere else in the world, not just in Saskatchewan or Canada, but in the world. If you think about where major sand dunes are, they're mostly in deserts or in very dry areas. But here, it's next to one of the biggest lakes in Canada. It's cut by 3 rivers that run through it. And one of the best ways of visiting these dunes is by canoe. I mean, how cool is that? I mean, there's just no other place in the world that I can think of that gives you that kind of experience.
And I particularly enjoy the Cypress Hills for all the reasons that we spoke about earlier. The scenery, the 2 different blocks to the park, the conglomerate cliffs, all natural formations and ways to get out in nature and enjoy things. And you can come back to that park throughout different seasons of the year and just take it in all its glory in so many different ways. And it's always changing. So that would be one of my favorite places.
Well, thank you so much for sharing that. I definitely want to get to those dunes up north for sure. That's on my list. So I don't think I see any other questions in the audience. So I will just say I'm gonna make another little comment in here. You all should buy this book if you haven't already. This revised and updated edition is a great guide, lovely photographs, and as you've been kind of like taken through the places with the Karpans tonight, I do encourage you to buy this book from the Karpans. I put the link to their website where you can purchase the book. And if not from the Karpans, from independent bookstores like Turning the Tide, McNally Robinson, the Penny University, and SaskBooks as well. We offer it. But I just want to encourage you all to buy the book if you haven't already. Thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in tonight. The recordings of this event will be available on the SaskBooks Facebook page and on our Book Week YouTube page, and then later on will be available on our SaskBooks YouTube page as well. So you can just, if you miss parts and you want to like revisit this, you can do so. Thank you so much, Robin and Arlene, for joining us tonight and for sharing your travels with us and your lovely photographs. I'm really grateful that you were able to participate.
So are we.
Thank you.
Thanks for asking us.
Thank you so much. So thank you, everyone. Have a great night. And thank you to the rest of the folks at SaskBooks for all your help, to our funders, the Department of Canadian Heritage, the Canada Book Fund, and Creative Saskatchewan. Yes, there's so many people to thank, and I hope you all have a lovely evening. Thanks for tuning in.
Good night.
Bye.